I overheard my wife telling her friend, "He's just a substitute. Once Jamie is back, I'll dump him." What I did next crushed her. I used to think mornings were my strong suit. You know that smug sense of adult accomplishment when you manage to fry eggs without setting off the smoke detector? That was me at 7:42 a.m., spatula in hand, humming like I had my life figured out. The coffee machine gurgled approvingly. The toast popped up golden, and Bianca, my wife of 5 years and self-appointed household CFO, walked into the kitchen wearing that white robe that made her look like an angel who charged hourly. She hummed too, some pop song from the radio, and for one stupidly hopeful second, I thought we were the kind of couple that people write greeting cards about. "Morning, chef," she said, kissing my cheek like she was giving a tip, not affection. I grinned like a Labrador who'd just been told he's a good boy. Eggs, toast, kiss, 3 for 3, baby. I sat down across from her, watching her scroll her phone, the soft blue light painting her face like a filter. She laughed at something on the screen, probably some meme about relationships and bare minimum husbands, and I pretended not to notice the irony. Bianca always looked put together. Even at breakfast, she had the kind of polish that made me feel like an unpaid intern in my own marriage. Her hair was a strategic mess, her robe, accidentally, slipping just enough to remind me she could stop traffic without even trying. And me? I was wearing my almost clean work shirt because I'd forgotten to do laundry again. But hey, I made breakfast, domestic god points, right? I kissed her cheek again on my way out. She smiled that practice smile, the one that said, "I'm late, but still prettier than you'll ever be." I got into my car, feeling weirdly proud of my adult functionality. Bills paid, gas tank full, marriage intact, or so I thought. I even said it out loud to myself as I drove off. Still married, still alive, still winning. 3 blocks later, the universe decided I'd had enough confidence for one day. I spotted my pitch folder, the one I'd spent all week preparing, sitting on the dining table through the window of my memory like a neon sign flashing idiot alert. My stomach dropped. Forgetting that folder would be like showing up to prom without pants. I sighed, did a U-turn smoother than my last tax return, and headed back home. The plan was simple. Sneak in, grab the folder, sneak out. No drama. No witnesses. Just quiet, married man efficiency. If life were a movie, the ominous music would have started right then, but I was too busy patting myself on the back for being responsible to notice. The house was quiet when I parked. I tiptoed in like a spy who'd misplaced his mission briefing. My shoes barely touched the floor. Then I heard it. Laughter. 2 voices. Bianca's and another woman's. Cara, her best friend, also known as the human embodiment of bad influence. They were in the living room, laughing like life was a rom-com, and I wasn't one plot twist away from a breakdown. I froze. My brain said, grab the folder and leave. My heart said, hold up, maybe she's saying something sweet about you. Yeah, my heart's a moron. I leaned just enough to hear better. Cara was giggling about something. Shoes, I think. Bianca's voice followed, casual, soft, dripping with the kind of comfort that comes when you don't think anyone's listening. And then, like a sentence sharpened on a guillotine, she said it. He's just a substitute. Once Jamie is back, I'll dump him. You ever hear words so heavy they rearrange your organs? I stood there, one hand on the wall, one on my car keys, trying to remember how breathing worked. Substitute. Like I was a temp employee in my own marriage. I wasn't even the backup quarterback. I was the water boy who thought he made varsity. Cara laughed. You're terrible, she said, the kind of terrible that means spill more tea. Bianca laughed too. My wife, the woman I'd spent 5 years loving like an unpaid intern, laughed about swapping me out like an old smartphone. And me? I didn't storm in, didn't yell, didn't throw the nearest kitchen utensil like a dramatic movie husband. Nope. I just stood there, still as the unpaid electricity bill on our counter, listening to the soundtrack of my humiliation. People talk about heartbreak like it's a loud thing, screaming, crying, breaking stuff. Nah, real heartbreak is quiet. It's the sound of 2 women laughing in your living room while you hold your car keys like a safety blanket. It's realizing you spent years thinking love was teamwork, only to learn you were playing solo. The weird part, my brain didn't even go to anger first. It went to logistics. Jamie? Who the hell is Jamie? Did I ever meet a Jamie? Wait, didn't she mention a coworker named Jamie last year? No, that was Jason. Or was it the gym guy? Crap, she did have a Jamie on her Instagram once, right? My thoughts were doing parkour while my heart was face down on the pavement. I backed away slowly, like a man avoiding a bear trap made of IKEA furniture. Every step toward the door felt like walking through syrup. My mind was doing math it couldn't solve. I thought of every dinner, every inside joke, every "I love you" text that suddenly looked like an out-of-office reply. When I reached the door, the folder, the whole reason I came back, was still sitting on the table. I stared at it. For a second, I almost laughed. The damn folder had better loyalty than my wife. I picked it up, walked out quietly, and sat in the car staring at my own reflection. My face looked wrong, like someone had swapped out the confident guy from this morning for a version running on sarcasm and caffeine fumes. The mirror showed a man who just got replaced mid-season. For a brief, delusional moment, I thought maybe I misheard. Maybe she said, "He's such a substitute teacher," or something random. Maybe I was overreacting. Then I remembered the tone, the ease, the way she laughed. Nah, no misunderstanding could survive that level of confidence. I started the car, but I didn't drive. I just sat there, listening to the faint hum of the engine, wondering how long it takes for trust to rot. The sky looked annoyingly cheerful, blue, cloudless, smug. Even the neighbor's dog looked happier than me. I muttered under my breath, "Of course, Jamie." Because every betrayal comes with a dude named Jamie. I could have confronted her right then. Burst in, dropped a cinematic line like, "Guess the substitute's still clocked in." But I didn't. Something colder settled in me, something I didn't know I had. Maybe pride, maybe self-preservation, maybe just pure exhaustion. Instead, I drove to work like a man whose life had subtitles in the wrong language. My mind replayed her words on loop. He's just a substitute. He's just a substitute. I laughed bitterly at a red light. The guy in the car next to me looked concerned. Probably thought I was rehearsing for a stand-up show called How to Be Emotionally Replaced in 10 Easy Steps. When I finally parked, I looked at the folder in the passenger seat and said out loud, "You better land this pitch, buddy, because you're all I've got left." And that's the story of how a perfectly normal morning turned into the prologue of my personal sitcom. Spoiler alert, the punchline hadn't even landed yet. But if my life was a joke, I was still holding the punch bowl, smiling like the idiot who thinks the party's still about him. There's a weird silence that happens after betrayal, like the world politely pauses to see if you'll scream or combust. I didn't do either. I just stood in my living room doorway, holding my pitch folder like it was a shield made of denial, and let her words echo through my skull. He's just a substitute. You'd think the phrase would dissolve after a few minutes, right? Nope. That sucker replayed like a top 40 hit on a broken car radio. Every syllable came with a remix of humiliation and a side of nausea. By the time I got to my car again, my heartbeat had a rhythm of its own. Fast, uneven, stupid. I wasn't angry yet. I was confused. That's the worst part of betrayal. It's not the heartbreak. It's the paperwork your brain starts filing immediately. What did I do wrong? When did it start? Was there a memo I missed? I sat there for a full 5 minutes, staring at the steering wheel, wondering how a guy who pays taxes, folds laundry, and remembers anniversaries could still be benched like a backup quarterback in his own marriage. When I finally started driving to work, the world looked the same, which honestly felt rude. The barista at the corner cafe still smiled. The crosswalk guy still waved like an over-caffeinated traffic fairy. Even the radio had the audacity to play, "I Want to Know What Love Is." I was supposed to pitch the new ad campaign for a luxury fitness brand, all about commitment and endurance. I almost laughed when I saw the slogan slide pop up, "Built to Last." Oh, the irony. I wanted to raise my hand and say, actually, commitment is overrated. Just buy a treadmill, it'll leave you eventually. But instead, I smiled. Because that's what corporate zombies do. Smile through emotional earthquakes. "Marcus, you ready to pitch?" my boss, Amanda, asked. She had that confident, expensive kind of energy, the kind that comes with perfect hair and the belief she's never been betrayed. I straightened my tie and said, "Absolutely," with the conviction of a man who had absolutely nothing under control. The words came out smooth, automatic, rehearsed. I talked about brand loyalty like I hadn't just been traded for someone named Jamie. I gestured. I smiled. I charmed. I even cracked a joke that made the room laugh. Meanwhile, My insides were staging a quiet protest. I was a one-man circus juggling heartbreak, anger, and professionalism, praying none of them fell on the floor. By the end of it, they clapped. My boss gave me a thumbs up. "That's why you're my guy," she said. I almost replied, "Tell that to my wife." Instead, I nodded like a functional adult, collected my notes, and walked out before my face betrayed how close I was to emotionally short-circuiting. The rest of the day blurred. Emails, calls, fake smiles. I ate a sandwich at my desk and tasted nothing. Ben stopped by with his usual nonsense about fantasy football trades, and I nodded in all the right places, but my mind was somewhere else. In that living room, replaying her voice. He's just a substitute. By 6 p.m., the office emptied out. I stayed behind, pretending to finish reports, mostly because the thought of going home made my skin itch. Home. That word used to sound warm. Now it sounded like an abandoned amusement park. I sat there, staring out at the city lights through the window, thinking about all the little things that built a marriage: grocery lists, arguments about laundry, inside jokes, shared bills, and how they can all vanish behind one sentence. The more I thought about it, the more absurd it felt. A substitute? Really? What was I substituting? Her emotional Wi-Fi? Did Jamie provide better coverage? I pictured the guy in my head, tall, charming, probably owned an acoustic guitar, and said things like, "You just feel like home." The kind of guy who doesn't know how to assemble IKEA furniture, but somehow gets praised for trying. Meanwhile, I'm the one who actually bought the furniture. I laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was the kind that sounds like it might come with an aneurysm. I laughed until it turned into coughing, then silence, then a long sigh that sounded suspiciously like defeat. By the time I got home, the sun was gone, and the house looked smaller. Funny how betrayal shrinks things. I walked in quietly, not because I was hiding, but because I didn't have the energy for noise. Bianca was out. Yoga, maybe. Or lying to someone else about substitutes. The air smelled like her perfume and deceit. I poured myself a drink. Whiskey. No ice. Straight honesty. I stood by the kitchen window and stared at the reflection of the man holding the glass. He looked older. Not in years, in spirit. Like a guy who'd been benched for a game he didn't even know he was playing. I thought about confronting her, marching into the living room, looking her dead in the eye, and saying, "So, who's Jamie? And do I get severance pay as the substitute?" But I didn't. Not because I was scared, though, to be fair, Bianca's glare could melt titanium, but because I needed to process it. I needed to be sure. You don't swing at shadows, you wait for the light. So I waited. I showered, ate leftovers that tasted like cardboard, and sat on the couch watching a show I didn't care about. Every laugh track in the sitcom felt like mockery. Around midnight, Bianca came home. She smiled, kissed my head, said, "You're still up?" I nodded. "Couldn't sleep," I said. She didn't notice the way my voice cracked around the edges. She just walked upstairs, humming again, the same song from that morning. It was almost poetic. If you like your poetry depressing. When I finally crawled into bed, she was already asleep. Peaceful. Dreaming of Jamie, maybe. I stared at the ceiling fan spinning lazily above us, wondering how long she'd been gone even while lying next to me. The room felt like a museum exhibit called Marriage before the collapse. Sometime before dawn, I whispered two truths into the dark. She said it, I told myself. And I heard it. Both facts. Both permanent. Both the kind of truths that don't leave when you turn the lights on. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't cry either. I just lay there, perfectly still, waiting for the sun to rise like it owed me an explanation. If you've ever had to go to work after realizing your marriage is basically a badly cast sitcom, you'll understand the kind of energy I brought into Monday. You'd think heartbreak would make you crumble, right? Nah, it makes you perform. That morning, I woke up with the precision of a man auditioning for The Truman Show, Depressed Edition. I showered, shaved, and put on my best "I'm fine" face, which, if I'm being honest, looked suspiciously like constipation mixed with denial. Bianca hummed her usual soundtrack of deceit in the kitchen, acting like the previous day's emotional guillotine hadn't decapitated my sense of trust. "You're leaving early today?" she asked, pouring orange juice like she hadn't used my heart as a cutting board. "Big pitch," I said, pretending not to remember the last one I'd given her. You know, the whole "I'll love you forever" campaign. Spoiler, didn't land. I drove to work blasting a podcast about emotional resilience, which felt ironic since I was actively plotting how to not commit a felony out of spite. The host kept saying things like, "You must accept your feelings and not judge them." Buddy, I was way past judgment. I was at the sentencing phase. At the office, everyone greeted me with their usual cheeriness, which I took as a personal attack. Amanda, my boss, asked, "Rough weekend?" I smiled, teeth clenched so tight I could have turned coal into diamonds. "Oh, I said. "Just the usual, emotional betrayal, light housework." She laughed, thinking I was joking. God bless corporate oblivion. By 10 a.m., I was deep into PowerPoint hell, rehearsing another presentation for the same fitness company that made me question the human need for abs. But here's the thing, I nailed it. Like, crushed it. I spoke with charisma I didn't know I had, using words like momentum and brand synergy as if my life depended on it. People clapped. Amanda gave me the approving nod reserved for overachievers and caffeine addicts. And me? I just smiled, wondering if anyone else in the room had ever delivered the performance of their life while slowly dying inside. That's when I realized something. The mask worked. Nobody could tell the difference between Marcus the confident marketer and Marcus the emotional dumpster fire. And honestly, that felt powerful. There's a sick kind of control in knowing you can look perfectly fine while your life's on fire. I wasn't ready to confront Bianca yet, but I was ready for something else, a plan. Not revenge, exactly. More like poetic retribution with good lighting. After work, I called Leo, my oldest friend, part-time conspiracy theorist, full-time chaos enabler. We'd been friends since college, bonded over bad beer and worse decisions. He picked up on the second ring, already suspicious. "You only call me when you're about to do something stupid," he said. "Perfect," I replied. "Because I'm planning something stupid but refined." He groaned. "Does this have anything to do with Bianca? You're psychic now?" "No, just observant." "You sound like a man who's been emotionally mugged." "Close enough," I said, explaining everything. The overheard conversation, the substitute comment, the Jamie situation, the whole Shakespearean disaster. Leo whistled low. "Damn, that's cold. Colder than her side of the bed," I said. He snorted. "All right, man, what's the plan?" "I don't know yet," I admitted. "I just know I can't let her walk around thinking she's the victim in a story she wrote herself." Leo paused for a beat. "You want revenge?" "No," I said too quickly. "I want justice with a hint of drama." "Same thing," he said. "What do you have in mind?" I stared at my reflection in the car window. I didn't have much, but I had clarity. I want her to feel what I felt. Not through yelling or cheating or petty nonsense. I want her to look in the mirror one day and realize she's the clown in her own circus. There was silence, then the sound of Leo cracking open a beer. He said slowly, "My sister Ruby's back from Paris. She's an actress. Could probably sell heartbreak in 6 languages. And, and she owes me a favor." I laughed. "Leo, I'm not hiring your sister to fake a relationship just to mess with my wife." "Why not?" he said, suddenly energized. "Think about it. You show up with someone magnetic, mysterious, confident, someone who makes Bianca realize she downgraded emotionally and socially. Boom. Instant regret. Plus, Ruby loves drama. You'd be doing her a public service." I leaned back in my chair, half amused, half horrified. "So, you're suggesting I perform emotional theater?" "Exactly. And you're the lead actor." Now, normally I'd shoot down an idea like that. But after hearing my wife casually refer to me as a stand-in husband, the thought of flipping the narrative sounded fun. Cathartic, even. Maybe revenge doesn't have to be flames and fury. Maybe it's style, grace, and just enough confusion to make the other person question their entire personality. "I'll think about it," I said, trying to sound rational. "No," Leo replied. "You'll do it. I'm calling Ruby." Before I could protest, he hung up. Classic Leo, throws the grenade and walks away. 15 minutes later, I got a text from an unknown number. "Hi, I'm Ruby. Heard you need an actress. Heard it involves emotional chaos." I'm intrigued. I stared at the message, then laughed out loud. Intrigued was an understatement. This woman was clearly genetically related to her brother. We agreed to meet the next evening at my favorite diner, a retro joint called Benny's that smelled like nostalgia and burnt coffee. When Ruby walked in, I almost stood up and applauded. She looked like she'd been styled by cinematic revenge itself. Dark hair, red lipstick, trench coat, confidence for days. She slid into the booth like she'd been rehearsing it. "So," she said, "tell me everything." I did. Every word, every laugh, every humiliating detail of that morning. She listened like a detective taking notes, her expression shifting from pity to delight. "So she called you a substitute?" Ruby repeated, arching an eyebrow. "That's bold. She must have forgotten substitutes often take over the game." I laughed, despite myself. "I like the way you think." "Oh, I don't just think," she said, sipping her coffee. "I perform." "So what's the goal? Humiliation? Closure? Public spectacle?" "A little of all three," I said. Ruby grinned like a magician about to pull a rabbit out of my sanity. "Perfect. I'll need details, her personality, her weak spots, her favorite social media platforms. If we're doing this, we're doing it right." "Wait," I said, blinking. "You're serious?" "Dead serious. You can't just say you're over someone. You have to demonstrate it with flair. Think of me as your emotional stunt double." I'll admit it, something inside me clicked. For the first time since hearing Bianca's words, I felt something other than defeat. I felt momentum, maybe even excitement. This wasn't about being cruel. It was about reclaiming the narrative, about reminding myself that I wasn't some placeholder in someone else's love story. I was the damn protagonist. As Ruby scribbled notes on a napkin, muttering about lighting, outfits, and psychological choreography, I realized Leo was right. This wasn't just a plan, it was theater therapy. And if Bianca wanted to turn our marriage into a show, fine. I'd just write the ending myself. When Ruby finally stood to leave, she smiled and said, "You'll thank me when she's speechless." "I'll thank you when she's gone," I muttered, half smiling. "Trust me," she said, tossing her hair dramatically. "We'll make her wish she'd never auditioned for your life." As she walked out, trench coat trailing behind her like a curtain call, I couldn't help but laugh. My life had officially become a mix of heartbreak, caffeine, and amateur theater. But for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel powerless. Maybe the best revenge isn't destruction, it's direction. And mine had just been cast. The next evening, I sat in my living room like a man about to sign up for an emotional reality show. I'd spent the day pretending to focus at work, but honestly, my brain was on a different channel. The Marcus Makes Questionable Life Choices network. Leo had texted me at noon. "She's in. Don't chicken out." I didn't respond because, well, I was too busy Googling how to fake confidence when your heart's on fire. At 7 sharp, my doorbell rang. I opened it expecting drama, and boy, did the universe deliver. Ruby walked in like she'd been summoned by chaos itself. She had on a fitted black jumpsuit, red lipstick sharp enough to file paperwork, and sunglasses, indoors, at night. She looked like she'd just finished arguing with paparazzi outside an awards show. "Marcus," she said, removing her shades with a flourish. "You look exactly like a man whose life needs a script doctor." "Wow," I said. "Thanks for the uplifting intro." She grinned. "Leo told me you're the quiet, dependable type. That means you've been underestimated your whole life, which makes this delicious." "Delicious?" I asked, pouring her a glass of water because that's what emotionally wrecked hosts do. "Yes," she said, sitting down like a director auditioning me for a role in my own tragedy. "Revenge, or as I like to call it, narrative correction, is an art. You don't just react, you rewrite." I blinked. "So you're a revenge consultant now?" "Think of me as creative direction for closure." I almost laughed, but she was serious, serious in that theater kid way that makes you wonder if there's background music you can't hear. She leaned forward, elbows on knees, eyes sparkling with mischief. "Tell me everything about Bianca." I sighed, rubbing my temples. "Where do I start?" "She's beautiful, smart, ambitious, and recently discovered her passion for emotionally assassinating me." Ruby tilted her head thoughtfully. "Okay, so, confident type with a superiority complex. Probably posts quotes about self-growth, but can't apologize to save her life." "Pretty much." "Excellent. I know her type." Ruby stood and started pacing like a lawyer building a case. "We need to hit her where it hurts. Perception. Women like Bianca don't feel guilt, they feel comparison. You need to become the version of yourself she thought she upgraded from. We're talking confidence, mystery, glow-up energy." I blinked. "You're turning me into a makeover montage." "Exactly. she said, pointing dramatically. We need a scene. A moment she can't unsee. That's where I come in. Ah, yes, I said deadpan. The mysterious woman who shows up out of nowhere to confuse my wife into self-reflection. Totally normal. Ruby smirked. You're catching on. She began sketching out ideas on a napkin she pulled from her bag, because apparently chaos always travels prepared. We'll create a believable scenario, a conversation she overhears, a visit that sparks jealousy but keeps you innocent. Think classy revenge, not cable TV revenge. Classy revenge, I repeated, sipping my coffee. That phrase sounds like a lawsuit waiting to happen. Ruby ignored me. We'll need rehearsals. Timing is everything. You can't just drop a bomb. You plant it, water it, and let it bloom right in her ego. Remind me again, I said. Why am I listening to you instead of a therapist? Because therapists charge per hour, she said with a wink, and I charge per result. I laughed despite myself. There was something contagious about her energy. Where I was all brooding and quiet bitterness, Ruby was pure momentum. She made revenge sound like performance art, and I was weirdly okay with that. We spent the next 2 hours crafting dialogue like screenwriters in a caffeine high. I told her exactly what Bianca said that day, every syllable, every smirk. Ruby wrote it down like gospel. She said you're a substitute, she repeated, underlining it twice. So we'll return that word to sender. Poetic symmetry. Great, I muttered. Because I've always wanted to star in a live-action breakup haiku. Don't worry, Ruby said, eyes gleaming. You'll come out of this looking like the guy who dodged a bullet, which, frankly, you did. When we finally wrapped the brainstorming session, my living room looked like a murder board of emotions, sticky notes everywhere, confidence. Eye contact. Pause for effect. Ruby clapped her hands. All right, rehearsal time. Rehearsal? Yes. You're not walking into this unprepared. Let's see your casual but wounded energy. I stared at her. My what? Pretend I'm Bianca. You just heard me call you a substitute. Go. I groaned. This is ridiculous. She snapped her fingers. Action. I sighed dramatically. Bianca, I can't believe you. Stop, Ruby said, waving her hand. Too much soap opera, not enough restraint. You're not begging. You're disappointed but detached. Make her wonder what you know that she doesn't. I rubbed my temples. You're terrifying, you know that? Thank you, she said sweetly. We kept practicing until even Greg, my desk cactus, looked emotionally exhausted. Finally, she declared me passably competent for a non-actor, which I decided to take as a compliment. Before leaving, she walked to the door and turned dramatically, like every exit in her life needed applause. Tomorrow night, I'll come by. I'll introduce myself as an ex-girlfriend. We'll make it believable. Let her see what she's missing. Wait, you're actually going to pretend to be my ex? Of course. Women like Bianca always assume men's lives revolve around them. The trick is showing her she's not the plot anymore. I stared at her. Ruby, you're enjoying this a little too much. She smiled, slipping on her sunglasses again. Darling, I majored in theater and pettiness. This is my Olympics. When the door shut, I just stood there, half amused, half terrified. I'd officially entered uncharted territory, the kind where sane men don't go without legal representation. Still, there was something exhilarating about it. For months, I'd been living like a ghost in my own house. Now, for the first time, I was doing something, even if that something involved emotional improv. Later that night, I called Leo. Your sister's intense, I said. He laughed. Oh, I know. Remember when she convinced our high school principal she was an exchange student from France? Whole semester. Yeah, that checks out, I said. If this goes wrong, I'm blaming you. Relax, Leo said. You'll thank me when Bianca's jaw hits the floor. I hung up, shaking my head, but smiling for the first time in weeks. Maybe Ruby was crazy. Maybe I was too. But crazy sounded a lot better than broken. The next morning, Bianca was already gone when I woke up. Typical. I made coffee, stared at the empty seat across the table, and thought about the plan. About how one overheard conversation had turned me from husband to strategist. Life has a funny way of forcing reinvention. That evening, I double-checked everything. House tidy, lights flattering, nerves semi-contained. Ruby texted, on my way. Cue the chaos. I almost backed out, almost. But then I remembered Bianca's laugh that day, sharp and careless. And suddenly, I wanted to see what it felt like to have the upper hand. When Ruby arrived, she looked even more cinematic than before. Fitted blazer, heels that screamed power, and confidence radiating like she'd invented it. Ready? She asked. Not remotely, I said. Good. Authentic fear sells better. We went over the lines one more time. Her plan was simple but devious. She'd show up pretending to be a blast from the past girlfriend who ran into me again. She'd charm Bianca, drop a few carefully crafted lines that echoed Bianca's own cruelty, and watch the emotional dominoes fall. I asked, "You sure about this?" She smirked. "Marcus, I once pretended to be a Russian heiress for a college theater grant. I can handle one suburban sociopath." Fair point. When she finally left that night, I sat on the couch staring at the spot where she'd stood, feeling the strange mixture of dread and satisfaction bubbling inside me. Tomorrow, the curtain would rise. I wasn't sure if it would end in triumph or disaster, but for the first time since that awful morning, I felt alive. And if I was going to crash, I was damn well going to look good doing it. You ever wake up knowing the day's gonna be weird? Like the universe leaves a sticky note on your brain that says, "Brace yourself, buddy." That was me. The morning felt too calm. Even the toaster behaved. I brewed coffee, looked out the window, and thought, today's the day Bianca learns acting isn't just for me pretending our marriage is fine. By noon, my stomach was staging protests. Ruby had texted, ETA 3 p.m. or something that says unbothered, yet successful. I didn't even know what that meant, so I settled on jeans, a crisp navy shirt, and my one pair of shoes that didn't squeak like they were gossiping about me. At 2:55 p.m., I paced the living room rehearsing Ruby's script like a man auditioning for the role of ex-husband with dignity. The plan was simple. Ruby would show up pretending to be an old flame, polite but loaded with subtext. Bianca would be home. She'd taken the afternoon off to declutter the closet, which, knowing her, meant reorganizing her ego collection. Then came the knock. 3 sharp taps, confident. Showtime. I opened the door and nearly forgot my own name. Ruby looked like a walking scandal. Sleek black dress, hair tied back, sunglasses large enough to qualify as privacy fences. "Hello, Marcus," she purred, voice smooth as melted chocolate. "Long time no see." For a half second I forgot this was fake and almost apologized for whatever I'd done in 2012. From the hallway, Bianca's voice floated in, bright and unsuspecting. "Who's that?" Ruby smiled at me without breaking character. "Invite me in, darling. Let's surprise her together." I stepped aside, silently whispering a prayer to every deity of comedic timing. Bianca emerged from the hallway, hair perfect, holding a laundry basket like it was a prop in a commercial for domestic bliss. Her smile faltered when she saw Ruby. Hi." Ruby extended a manicured hand, dripping confidence. "Hi. You must be Bianca. I'm Ruby, Marcus's old girlfriend. We go way back. I was in town and thought I'd stop by to say hello." You could have bottled Bianca's confusion and sold it as perfume. Oda, what the hell? She blinked. "Oh, really? Old girlfriend." Hum, Ruby said, strolling into the living room like she owned equity in the place. "We met before you two were together. Such memories." She turned to me, smiling sweetly. "You haven't changed a bit." My brain screamed, "Don't grin like an idiot." So naturally, I grinned like an idiot. Yeah, wow, surprise." Bianca set down the laundry basket slowly, eyes darting between us like she'd just discovered subtitles in her marriage. "How nice." Her tone was the verbal equivalent of disinfectant, sterile and burning. Ruby glanced around the living room, pretending to admire the decor. "Oh, you kept the same curtains. Remember Marcus? You bought those when we lived downtown. What was it? That tiny apartment with the terrible plumbing." My soul left my body. We'd never lived downtown. Hell, I hate apartments. But Ruby said it with such conviction, even I almost believed her. Bianca's lips tightened. "Downtown." Ruby smiled sweetly. "Oh, it was ages ago. He probably doesn't even remember. Men forget these things." She laughed, a soft, melodic laugh that made Bianca's jaw clench audibly. I decided to throw in a neutral comment before the room burst into flames. "Yeah, those were simpler times." Bianca folded her arms. "So you just dropped by?" Ruby nodded, feigning innocence. "Of course. I was nearby and thought, why not? Marcus and I always stayed friendly. I wanted to thank him, actually." Bianca arched an eyebrow. Thank him for what? Ruby took a step closer, lowering her voice theatrically. For being such a good placeholder until I figured myself out. Time. Froze. I nearly swallowed my tongue. Bianca's expression went from mild suspicion to DEFCON 1. I'm sorry, what did you just say? Ruby smiled like she'd just won a silent auction. Oh, nothing malicious. Just that Marcus was the best substitute boyfriend a girl could ask for. You know, reliable, sweet, temporary. She tilted her head. You're lucky, Bianca. Most men can't handle being second string. Bianca blinked so hard I thought she'd reboot. Second string? Ruby shrugged delicately. Oh, don't take it personally. He grew on me. Like a loyal plant you forget to water, but somehow thrives anyway. I coughed to keep from laughing. It came out sounding like a dying walrus. Bianca shot me a glare that could melt steel. So you two were serious? Ruby placed a hand over her heart, the picture of mock sincerity. Define serious. We were young, passionate, tragically incompatible, mainly because I moved to Paris to pursue theater and he stayed here to build his empire. Empire? Ma'am, I sell marketing campaigns, not islands. Bianca, visibly rattled, forced a laugh. Well, people grow up, right? Ruby nodded, gaze sly. Yes, some of us grow up. Some just grow different stories about ourselves. Bianca's jaw tightened like she was holding in a scream. Marcus never mentioned you. Ruby gasped softly. Really? Oh dear. Maybe I was more memorable to him than he was to me. I swear I heard thunder though the forecast said clear skies. Bianca's voice dropped an octave. How long are you in town, Ruby? Oh, not long, Ruby said cheerfully. Just a quick visit before heading back to Europe. I thought I'd check in on old times and old flames. She winked at me, so casually I almost applauded the performance. Bianca looked like she might hurl the laundry basket through a window. Well, that's nice. We're actually quite busy, so. Ruby held up a hand, her tone softening to Oscar-worthy empathy. Bianca, you don't have to pretend with me. I know how hard it is, living with someone who was never supposed to be temporary. Silence. Actual, soul leaving the body silence. Then, like the professional actress she was, Ruby smiled one last time, patted my arm, and said, Anyway, lovely seeing you both. Oh, and Marcus, if you ever find that old leather jacket of mine, keep it. It looked better on you anyway. And just like that, she walked out, heels clicking, perfume lingering, leaving behind emotional debris and one stunned audience of two. Bianca stood there, frozen. I could practically see the equations in her head trying to solve what had just happened. What, she said slowly, was that? I shrugged, aiming for confused but casual. Old friend, I guess. I didn't know she was back. Old friend? She snapped. She called herself your ex. Did she? I said, pretending to think. Huh, I guess she's dramatic like that. Bianca blinked at me like she was reconsidering all her life choices. And you didn't tell me about her, because? I didn't think it mattered, I said, sipping my coffee. It was ages ago. She glared. Well, she clearly still cares. I shrugged again, the universal male code for, I'm not losing this argument. Maybe. People remember what they want. Her eyes narrowed. She called you a substitute. I met her gaze, steady. We all have our phases. It was subtle, but I saw it. The flicker of doubt, the quick retreat of arrogance. For the first time in forever, Bianca didn't look like the one in control. She looked thrown. And dear God, it was satisfying. She grabbed her phone like she needed backup, muttering, I need to call Kara. I almost laughed. Sure, she'll love this story. Don't start, she hissed. I leaned back on the couch, cool as iced tea in July. Start what? I'm just as surprised as you. She spun on her heel and stormed upstairs, slamming the bedroom door hard enough to wake the ancestors. I waited until I heard the shower running before texting Ruby. Mission accomplished. Collateral damage. None. Pride restored. She replied instantly. Told you. Curtain closed, applause pending. I couldn't stop grinning. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about balance. After months of feeling like the punchline, I finally got to deliver one. That night, Bianca barely spoke to me. She made dinner in passive-aggressive silence, stabbing vegetables like they owed her money. I kept a straight face, humming cheerfully just to annoy her. Every now and then, she'd glance at me like she was trying to decide whether to ask questions or file a missing person report for her confidence. When she finally said, So, how long ago was it with Ruby? I smiled softly. Long enough that it doesn't matter, short enough that you'd care. She blinked, speechless. I went back to my pasta. Later, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling feeling something strange, peace. Not because she'd suffered, but because I'd reclaimed a piece of myself she'd stolen without permission. For the first time, I wasn't the guy begging for affection. I was the man whose silence made her restless. Before falling asleep, I texted Leo, "Tell your sister she deserves an award." He sent back 3 clapping emojis and a beer mug. Down the hall, Bianca tossed and turned, her mind probably racing through old memories trying to place Ruby in them. Spoiler, she wouldn't find her. And me? I smiled into the dark, finally understanding what real freedom sounded like. It was the quiet hum of victory mixed with the distant echo of a slammed door. If you've ever been in a house after a bomb of awkwardness goes off, you know the quiet that follows. It's not peaceful. It's that eerie, pre-hurricane stillness where even the walls are pretending not to gossip. That's how my house felt the morning after Ruby's visit. Like every piece of furniture was quietly judging me for enjoying it. Bianca didn't speak a word over breakfast. She buttered her toast like it had personally offended her. I sat across from her, sipping coffee, pretending to check emails I hadn't even opened. Every few minutes she'd glance at me, then back at her phone, then sigh dramatically, like an actress who just realized she's not getting nominated this year. I knew what she was doing. Fishing for confirmation, waiting for me to bring up Ruby. But I didn't. The secret sauce of revenge? Silence. It makes people fill in blanks you haven't even written yet. By the time she left for work, I swear her brain looked like one of those FBI corkboards, red strings, pins, a whole conspiracy theory titled "Who is Ruby and Why is My Husband So Calm?" Fast forward to that afternoon. I was halfway through a conference call when my phone buzzed. "Bianca, we need to talk tonight." Which, translated from wife to English, meant prepare for emotional fireworks and possible homicide. I spent the rest of the day mentally rehearsing responses like a lawyer with a caffeine addiction. When I got home, she was waiting, sitting at the dining table with a manila envelope so thick it screamed legal paperwork. She didn't even wait for me to hang up my jacket. "I went to see Mr. Barnes," she said flatly. I blinked. "The divorce lawyer?" She didn't flinch. "Yes. I think it's best if we separate before things get uglier." Now, I don't know what reaction she was expecting. Tears, begging, a rom-com monologue about love lost and second chances. Instead, I nodded slowly and said, "Okay." Her eyebrows shot up. "Okay, that's all you have to say. What else do you want me to say? Thank you for your business? You already printed the papers." Her lips tightened. "You're not even going to fight for this." I almost laughed. "Bianca, I stopped fighting for this marriage the day I realized I was the only one in the ring." That threw her off. She sat back, folding her arms like she was cold but too proud to grab a sweater. "You don't even look upset." "I did my crying during tax season," I said. "Now I'm just tired." She stared at me like she didn't recognize me, which, to be fair, she didn't. She was used to Marcus the Eager, the guy who bent backward to fix everything, who thought patience could cure arrogance. This new version of me, calm, detached, borderline smug, wasn't in her script. She slid the papers across the table. "You'll find everything in order." Mr. Barnes drew up a fair settlement. I glanced through them, noting the empty sections. "You didn't ask for anything." Her chin lifted. "I don't need anything from you." "Wow," I said softly. "You're giving up a man and his Netflix password." Brave. That earned me the Bianca glare, a look that had once melted my resolve, but now just made me want to order takeout. "I'm serious," she snapped. "I don't want a cent." "Good," I said, setting the papers down, because I was fresh out of guilt currency. She blinked, clearly expecting a fight, maybe even a begging session. But I had nothing left to offer except detachment and sarcasm, and both looked damn good on me. "Is there someone else?" she asked suddenly. I frowned. "You mean besides my imaginary ex-girlfriend Ruby?" Her eyes narrowed. "You're mocking me." "I'm adjusting," I corrected. "Mocking's just part of the process." She sighed dramatically. "Marcus, can we at least be civil about this?" "We are being civil," I said. "You're divorcing me politely, and I'm agreeing quietly. It's practically a Hallmark ending." She rolled her eyes. "You're insufferable. Apparently not enough to keep you," I said with a shrug. That one landed. I saw it in her face, the microsecond of regret, the twitch of, maybe I miscalculated. But pride's a stubborn beast. She swallowed hard, grabbed her bag, and said, "You'll get the final papers in a few days." I watched her walk out, suitcase in hand, heels clicking on the tile like a countdown clock. When the door shut, the silence hit me. Not the same heavy kind from before. This one was lighter, clean, like the air after a thunderstorm. I sat there staring at the table for a long minute, then poured myself a drink. Whiskey again. It had become my unofficial therapist. Less judgmental, more efficient. I raised the glass toward the door and muttered, to substitutes who finally quit the game. That night, I slept like a man who'd been carrying a piano and finally set it down. No tossing, no turning, no haunted dreams about reconciliation. Just peace and a mild hangover. The next few days were weirdly productive. I went to work, crushed my presentations, and even joined Ben and the office crew for lunch, something I hadn't done since before the substitute saga. They joked. I laughed. I even flirted with the waitress a little. Nothing serious, just the harmless, I still got it kind of flirt. And damn, it felt good. Bianca, meanwhile, was documenting her rebirth on Instagram like she was launching a startup. Day 1. Selfie with cappuccino, caption new chapter. Day 3. Mirror pic in a new apartment, caption fresh start. Day 5. Inspirational quote about letting go of what no longer serves you. Day 6. A boomerang of her wine glass clinking against nothing, tagged independent vibes. I wasn't jealous. If anything, I was impressed. The woman could turn a divorce into a lifestyle brand. Then, out of curiosity or masochism, I checked her stories one night and noticed she'd posted a video of her apartment. Shiny, white walls, minimalist decor, the whole look how free I am aesthetic. But her smile didn't reach her eyes. It looked rehearsed. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. 2 weeks later, the official divorce papers arrived in the mail. Plain envelope, no drama. I signed them that night while eating takeout. Not symbolic, just practical. People talk about closure like it's a big, cinematic event, but honestly, it feels more like paying a bill. You sign, you file, you exhale. Done. I put the papers in a drawer, then stared at them for a long minute. The thing about endings? They always look smaller than they feel. 10 pages of legal jargon to erase 5 years of mornings, arguments, and shared grocery lists. My hand hovered for a second before I closed the drawer and whispered, "Souvenirs are overrated." A week later, Ruby called. "So," she said, "how's life post-apocalypse?" I laughed. "Surprisingly peaceful. You should try divorce sometime. Very slimming for the soul." She chuckled. "You handled that like a pro. Most men would have thrown something." "I did," I said. Her assumptions. We talked for an hour. Turns out she'd been watching the Bianca show unfold online too. "She's trying too hard," Ruby said. "You can always tell when someone's building a life for the camera." "Yeah," I said, smiling. "She's hashtagging her loneliness." Ruby laughed. "Well, if you ever need an acting partner again, call me. Only if the next role involves less emotional warfare," I said. "Deal," she replied, and hung up. That night, I stood by the window, city lights blinking like they were winking at me. The house felt different now, mine again. Quiet, but not empty. I realized I wasn't angry anymore. Just done. Truly, beautifully done. Bianca's name popped into my head briefly, but it didn't sting. It was just a name. A character who'd finished her arc and exited stage left. Before bed, I looked at the drawer with the papers one last time. For a moment, I considered burning them or framing them out of irony. Instead, I just laughed and said, "Nah, bad decor." Then I turned off the lights, crawled into bed, and thought, maybe substitutes make the best graduates. You know how people say time heals all wounds? Yeah, no. Time just gives your wounds Wi-Fi, so they can update themselves when you least expect it. 2 weeks after signing my divorce papers, I thought I was finally detoxed from Bianca. My mornings had rhythm again. Coffee, shower, no passive-aggressive commentary about towel placement. Even Greg, the cactus, looked happier. Life was finally simple. Then I heard that name again. Jamie. It started with a text from Leo. "Bro, you might want to check Bianca's page. Entertainment value, high." Now, any message that begins with "you might want to check" should legally come with a warning label. Against my better judgment, I opened Instagram, that virtual landfill of curated lies, and there she was, Bianca, looking like a Hallmark ad for "I'm totally over my ex." The caption under her new post read, "Sometimes the universe brings people back for a reason." And right there in the comments, a heart emoji from Jamie_it_. I blinked so hard I almost reset my vision. Jamie, the ghost of betrayal past. The name that started this whole train wreck. I scrolled through his profile. Motivational quotes, protein shakes, and a haircut that screamed midlife crisis, sponsored by Optimism. The bio read, entrepreneur, traveler, believer in second chances. Of course it did. Jamie looked like the type of guy who used networking as both a verb and an excuse for bad behavior. Apparently, he was back in town. The phrase made me physically recoil. Back in town. What was he, a seasonal pest? I could practically hear the cheesy trailer voice. This summer, Jamie returns to ruin everything again. For a solid minute, I debated whether to care. Then I saw Bianca reply to his comment with a smiley face. A smiley face. The universal symbol for "I'm about to make terrible decisions and pretend it's fate." I tossed my phone onto the couch like it was contagious. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Not in a jealous way. More like in a "you have got to be kidding me" kind of way. I'd just watched this woman rebrand herself as Miss Independent, and now she was lining up for a sequel with the same guy who ghosted her years ago. You ever want to shake someone and yell, "Read your own press release"? That was me. A few days later, I ran into Cara, Bianca's partner in crime, the gossip ambassador herself, at the grocery store. She spotted me near the cereal aisle, froze, then smiled like she'd just seen a live episode of Regret, the series. "Marcus," she said, voice sugary but shaky. "You look good. Divorce suits me," I said, tossing a box of Cheerios into the cart. She chuckled awkwardly. "Bianca mentioned you've been busy." "Yep," I said. "Working, sleeping, not being a placeholder." "It's wild." Her smile faltered, but she pushed on. "Well, she's been doing great too. Really glowing lately. Jamie's back, you know." "Oh, I heard," I said, feigning surprise. Maybe the city should issue a warning. Cara blinked. "They're meeting up next week." "Good for them," I said. Nothing screams personal growth like returning to the scene of the crime. She gave a nervous laugh, probably sensing I was 2 sarcastic comments away from writing a tell-all memoir. "Anyway," she said, "you seem different." "I upgraded my emotional operating system," I replied. "Less buffering, fewer crashes." She didn't get it, of course. Cara's the type who thinks emotional intelligence is a brand of wine. Later that night, Leo came over with beers and bad advice, his 2 strongest traits. "You saw the post?" he asked. "Unfortunately," I said. "Our girl's apparently starring in Jamie, the Resurrection." He took a swig. "You gonna do anything about it?" "Like what?" "Send her a warning label." He grinned. "You could crash their reunion. Make an entrance." "Leo," I said, "I've already played my part in that soap opera. I'm not signing up for season 2. Still, curiosity's a nasty drug." I found myself scrolling again the next morning. Bianca was posting like she was on a press tour. New outfits, new captions, new optimism. And I'll give it to her. She looked radiant. The kind of glow people mistake for happiness when it's really adrenaline and denial. Then came the photo. A dinner reservation confirmation tagged, "Can't wait to reconnect." I nearly spat out my coffee. Who publicly announces a romantic ambush? I muttered to Greg the cactus. "She's treating heartbreak like a franchise." Ruby called that afternoon. "You've seen the circus?" she asked. "Oh, I've got front row seats," I said. "I might even sell popcorn." She laughed. "Well, here's the plot twist. Jamie's not who she thinks he is anymore." I frowned. "Meaning?" "Meaning he's married. Happily, allegedly. I have a friend who did a commercial with his wife last year. Cute kid, dog, mortgage, the whole suburban bingo card." I blinked. "Wait. Married?" "Yep. Tessa. She's sweet. Does yoga, volunteers, probably makes her own almond milk." I leaned back, stunned. "You're telling me Bianca's out here drafting love sonnets for a guy who's busy assembling IKEA furniture with his wife?" "Basically," Ruby said. "You think she knows?" "Knowing Bianca? She probably assumes he's just married to his career." Ruby snorted. "Oh, this is going to be messy." And that's when the evil part of my brain, the same part that once thought proposing at a vineyard was romantic, started to whisper, "You could warn her, or you could wait." I didn't want revenge anymore, not really. But curiosity is its own form of gravity. I wanted to see how she'd react when reality finally RSVP'd to her fantasy. So I did nothing. Which, trust me, is harder than it sounds. The night of their reunion, I couldn't focus on anything. I tried watching TV, but every commercial felt like a metaphor. A couple smiling over dinner? Check. A man apologizing in a cologne ad? Double check. Even the insurance commercial said, "Life comes at you fast." Yeah, thanks, Jake from State Farm. Around 10, I got a text from Leo. She's meeting him now. At Lorcadia. Fancy place. Candles. Live jazz. Waiters who judge you by your wallet. Bianca probably rehearsed her smile in the mirror. I poured another drink and imagined the scene. Her walking in all confident, him doing that awkward, "Oh hey," face men do when confronted by past decisions. I pictured his wife calling mid-meal. I pictured the whole illusion collapsing like a bad souffle. And, yeah, I laughed. Not because I wanted her hurt, but because Karma's screenwriter deserved an award. Sure enough, around midnight, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I picked up, half expecting a telemarketer, but no, it was Bianca. Her voice was shaky. "Marcus." I blinked. "Bianca? To what do I owe the pleasure?" She hesitated. "He's married," she blurted out. There it was, the sound of reality snapping like a cheap bracelet. "Who, Jamie?" I said, pretending ignorance so pure it deserved an Oscar. "Yes, married. With a kid." He didn't tell me. I just showed up, and his wife opened the door. He introduced me as an old friend. "Ouch," I said, sipping my drink. "That's rough." She went quiet. "You don't sound surprised." I shrugged even though she couldn't see me. "I'm just processing." "You okay?" Her laugh came out sharp and hollow. "Okay, I made a fool of myself." I wanted to say, "Welcome to the club," but I held back. Instead, I said, "Maybe take this as a sign. Not every ghost deserves a reunion." Silence. Then a sniff. "You must be loving this," she said. "Loving it?" "No. Learning from it." "Absolutely." She sighed. "You were right about a lot of things." "Yeah," I said softly. But I stopped keeping score. She mumbled something about needing air and hung up. I stared at the phone for a long time. The satisfaction I thought I'd feel? It wasn't victory. It was relief. Like watching a storm pass that you didn't have to chase. Later, I texted Ruby. "You called it." She replied, "Told you. Karma doesn't need an assistant, but it loves an audience." I laughed, then turned off my phone. For the first time in months, I didn't dream about betrayal or payback. Just quiet. And maybe, just maybe, a small part of me hoped Bianca would finally stop auditioning for love stories that weren't hers. There's a particular kind of silence that follows humiliation. It's not quiet, it's hollow. Like your pride left the building but forgot to take its echo with it. Bianca's silence lasted 2 days after the Jamie fiasco. I didn't expect her to call again. After all, what do you say to the ex-husband you once called a substitute when your upgrade turns out to be a family man with a minivan? Probably nothing that comes with dignity. So, imagine my surprise when, on a perfectly ordinary Tuesday evening, there was a knock on my door and I opened it to find Bianca standing there, looking like every rom-com heroine 10 minutes before the plot twist. She had that, "I've been crying but I won't admit it" face, the one women wear when they've just realized karma doesn't offer refunds. She clutched her purse like it was emotional armor. Behind her, the late afternoon sun was doing that cinematic glow thing, because apparently even the universe likes good lighting for dramatic irony. "Marcus," she said softly, like my name tasted strange now. "Bianca," I replied, matching her tone but not her energy. "If you're here to return my Netflix password, I already changed it." A flicker of a smile, then gone. "Can I come in?" I considered saying no. It would have been poetic. But I'm a sucker for closure and bad decisions, so I stepped aside. "Sure. Wipe your feet." I just vacuumed the past. She walked in slowly, looking around like she was visiting a museum exhibit of her old life. The place looked different, brighter, cleaner, quieter. Probably because it wasn't marinated in tension anymore. "You redecorated," she said, scanning the new furniture. "Yeah. Turns out resentment isn't a good color palette." She winced. "I deserve that." "Good. Saves me from having to repeat it." She sat down on the couch, her old couch, and folded her hands. "I guess you heard what happened." "I might have caught the trailer," I said. "Jamie's married, right? Wife, kid, the whole American guilt package." She sighed. "You sound pleased." Pleased? No. Entertained? Slightly. Her shoulders sagged. I was so stupid. Eh, I said, sitting across from her. You were ambitious. You wanted a story that made you feel alive. Unfortunately, you picked one that came with a wife and toddler. She flinched. You don't have to rub it in. I'm not rubbing it in, I said calmly. I'm rubbing it out, like a stain that's overstayed its welcome. For a long moment, she just stared at me. Then, softly, he didn't tell me. I swear. He made it sound like he was single. He even said he missed me. I tilted my head. Classic Jamie. Guy probably practices that line in the mirror before breakfast. Her laugh was small, bitter. You always had a joke for everything. Yeah, well, humor's cheaper than therapy. Silence stretched between us. Not tense, just thick with the weight of things we never said. Finally, she whispered, You must think I got what I deserved. I think, I said slowly. The universe has a way of repeating lessons until we stop being stubborn students. She nodded, staring at her hands. I just wanted something real again. I leaned back. Then why come to the man you called fake? That hit her. She looked up, eyes wet. Because you were the only real thing I ever had. I just didn't see it until I lost it. Now, here's the thing about confessions. They sound noble until you realize they're just late invoices for old emotions. I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt done. I appreciate that, I said. But I think what you miss isn't me. It's the idea that someone once forgave you without making you earn it. Her lip trembled. You make it sound like I'm a villain. No, I said softly. You're just the kind of person who confuses being admired with being loved. And I played along. She covered her face with her hands, groaning. God, Marcus, you always know how to turn a sentence into a therapy session. Hey, I charge by the hour now. That made her laugh. The real kind, the one I used to love. It filled the room for a second, and for that brief, stupid heartbeat, it felt like old times. Then she stopped and looked around, remembering this wasn't our home anymore. Do you ever miss me? She asked quietly. I thought about it. About the mornings, the shared jokes, the easy familiarity before things went wrong. Sometimes, I admit it. But I also miss being naive enough to think love was enough. She nodded, tears brimming but not falling. I thought Jamie would give me that spark again. I thought I could rewrite everything. Yeah, I said. But you can't rewrite a story when you're still holding the same pen. She smiled faintly. You always were good with words. Words I should have saved for a better audience, I muttered. Her gaze softened. You really hate me, don't you? Hate you? No. I shook my head. You'd have to matter that much for me to hate you. I just learned how to stop bleeding over people who don't bring bandages. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Outside, a car horn blared, a kid laughed somewhere down the block, and inside, the air was heavy with the ghost of what-ifs. She finally stood, brushing imaginary dust from her jeans. I should go. Probably a good idea, I said. Before I start charging emotional rent. She hesitated. Can I ask one last thing? Depends. Does it involve me pretending to forget everything you said about Jamie? No, she said softly. Just, did you ever love me? I laughed under my breath. Bianca, I loved you so much I forgot how to love myself. That's how I know I was serious. She swallowed hard. Then I'm sorry. I nodded. Apology accepted, but not required. We both did what we knew how to do. You chased excitement. I chased peace. Turns out, we were both exhausted. That cracked her composure. She turned, covering her mouth like she could hold the emotion in physically. You're different now. Yeah, I said, smiling. Freedom looks good on me. She looked at me for one long second, the kind that feels like a slow rewind through memories, then walked to the door. Her hand lingered on the knob. I really did love you, you know. I know, I said. Just not the way I needed. She nodded once and left. No dramatic music, no final kiss, no lingering glance. Just the sound of the door closing softly, which, if you ask me, is the real definition of closure. After she left, I stood in the middle of the living room, staring at the space she'd occupied. For a long minute, I felt everything: sadness, relief, nostalgia, liberation, like a cocktail mixed by a bartender with emotional issues. Then I exhaled and said to the empty room, well, that was cinematic. I poured myself a drink and sat down, chuckling at the absurdity of it all. The woman who once dismissed me as a substitute had come back looking for authenticity, only to find I'd already reclaimed it. Life really does write better plot twists than Netflix. My phone buzzed, a message from Ruby. Heard from the grapevine your ex paid a visit. Need bail money or applause? I grinned and typed back. Neither. Just peace. It's weird, but I think I'm finally allergic to drama. She replied with a clapping emoji and a heart. As I leaned back on the couch, the evening lights spilling across the room, I realized something simple but profound. I didn't need Bianca's apology, or Ruby's approval, or even Jamie's downfall. I just needed to stop auditioning for love stories where I wasn't meant to be cast. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like a substitute, or a placeholder, or the quiet husband holding the punch bowl. I felt like the main character again, bruised, wiser, and, damn it, still standing. You'd think once an ex shows up crying on your couch, karma would clock out and go home. Nope. Karma's got overtime pay and a caffeine addiction. A week after Bianca's visit, I figured the drama had finally wrapped. The script was done, credits rolling, audience applauding my emotional growth. Then she texted me at 10 p.m., 3 dots, a pause, then, can we talk? Please. Those 3 dots might as well have been grenades. I stared at the screen like it was radioactive. I knew better than to answer, but curiosity is basically emotional junk food. I said, 5 minutes. That was my first mistake. She arrived 20 minutes later, wearing a sweatshirt big enough to hide shame and mascara stains. I opened the door, half expecting her to bring a priest or a PowerPoint presentation on why the universe hates me. Instead, she stood there, small and tired, and said the line that officially broke my sarcasm meter. Jamie's married. He didn't tell me. I leaned against the doorframe, expression neutral. Yeah, I heard. Tragic, really. They should add that to wedding vows. In sickness, in health, and when your ex shows up uninvited. Her shoulders slumped. You knew, didn't you? Let's just say I wasn't shocked, I said. She stepped inside, her voice trembling between guilt and self-pity. You must think I'm pathetic. I shut the door gently. I think you're human. And humans are spectacularly bad at learning lessons the first time. She sank onto the couch again, the couch that, at this point, deserved its own therapy session. I just don't understand, she said. He told me he missed me. He said we still had something. Yeah, I said. It's called bad judgment. He's got a subscription. Her eyes watered. I feel so stupid. I sighed and sat across from her. You're not stupid, Bianca. You're just predictable. Her head snapped up. Excuse me. Come on. You love the drama. The chase. The idea that someone wanted you more than I did. Jamie gave you that illusion. You didn't want love. You wanted applause. She stared at me like I'd slapped her with a thesaurus. You think you know everything, don't you? No, I said. But I heard enough. Her brow furrowed. What do you mean? I let the words hang, watching them land. That day I forgot my pitch folder, remember? The morning of the big meeting? Yeah. I came back home and overheard you and Kara. I heard you call me a substitute. I heard you laugh about dumping me once Jamie came back. Her face drained of color. She blinked, once, twice, like her brain was buffering. You heard that. Every word. I said. Even the part where you said I was safe but boring. For the record, boring people don't help build someone else's dream kitchen. She opened her mouth, closed it again. I didn't mean it like that. Oh, fantastic, I said, clapping slowly. I'd love to hear what part of once Jamie's back I'll dump him I misinterpreted. Maybe it was performance art. Her lips trembled. Marcus, please. I was venting. Kara was. An enabler, I cut in. Yeah, I figured. But you? You were comfortable. You weren't angry. You weren't hurt. You were just cruel. Casually, effortlessly cruel. Tears finally spilled, and part of me, the soft, stupid part, almost felt bad. But then I remembered the months I spent wondering why she'd grown distant while I cooked breakfast and paid bills and thought we were still a team. Guilt doesn't look good on me, but honesty? That fits like a tailored suit. I didn't want to hurt you, she said weakly. Too late, I said. You did it on a Tuesday morning before I'd even finished my toast. She wiped her eyes. So Ruby, that woman who came by, she was part of this, wasn't she? I smiled, slow and deliberate. Now you're catching up. She's Leo's sister. Actress. Brilliant, by the way. Bianca stared at me in disbelief. So that whole visit, the ex-girlfriend thing, you planned that? Every second, I said. Consider it an educational program. Empathy 101, when the tables turn. Her jaw tightened. That's sick. No, I said calmly. That's symmetrical. I didn't scream. I didn't cheat. I didn't break your things. I just let you meet yourself from the outside. Turns out she's not that charming. She folded her arms, trying to salvage pride from the wreckage. So what? You're proud of humiliating me. Not proud, just satisfied. She laughed bitterly. You've changed. Yeah, I said. Turns out getting stabbed in the back builds character. For a long while, we sat in silence, both of us aware that the air in the room was thick enough to file taxes. Finally, she whispered, why didn't you confront me then? Because, I said, if I'd confronted you that day, you'd have cried, lied, and convinced me I'd misunderstood. And I would have believed you, because I loved you. But I wanted the truth to be undeniable. So I waited. Sometimes silence does more damage than shouting ever could. Her voice cracked. You wanted me to suffer. No, I said softly. I wanted you to see. Big difference. She looked up at me, mascara streaked, face raw. You're really done with me, aren't you? I nodded slowly. Yeah, Bianca. I ran out of maybe next times. She stood up, pacing, her emotions ricocheting between guilt and anger. You think you're the hero here, don't you? Oh no, I said. I'm just the survivor of your origin story. Her laugh was sharp. You always have a comeback. I had to, I said. You never gave me a real conversation, just lectures with commercial breaks. She froze mid-stride. So this is it. This was it a long time ago, I said. You just didn't hear the credits roll. She turned toward the door, then stopped. For what it's worth, you didn't deserve that. Any of it. I shrugged. I know. But thanks for finally saying it out loud. I didn't know you could be this cold, she said softly. Not cold, I corrected. Just done playing the warm-hearted idiot. Her chin trembled. I thought you were different. I was, I said. That was the problem. For a moment, she stood there like she wanted to argue, but all the words seemed to fall apart before reaching her mouth. She finally said, so what now? Now, I said, standing. You leave, and I reclaim my living room as a drama-free zone. She gave a sad smile. I really did love you, you know. I believe you, I said. You just loved yourself a little more. That landed harder than I meant it to. Her breath hitched, eyes glistening, and for a second she looked fragile, the way people do when they realize their reflection isn't who they thought it was. Then she turned and walked out. The door clicked shut, and for the first time in forever, it didn't echo. It just settled. I stood there for a while, listening to the quiet hum of the fridge, the soft buzz of the street outside. Then I smiled, small and real. It wasn't triumph. It was release, the kind that comes when you finally drop the weight you didn't realize you were carrying. I grabbed my phone, texted Leo. She knows everything now. He replied instantly. How'd she take it? I typed. Like a woman realizing karma has better aim than she does. He sent back a laughing emoji and a beer mug. Then Ruby texted too. Heard from Leo. Proud of you, Professor. You taught the class well. I chuckled. Next semester, Emotional Boundaries 101. When I put the phone down, I felt something strange, peace, wrapped in exhaustion. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger requires energy, and I'd finally spent mine on something useful, honesty. Before heading to bed, I glanced at the spot where Bianca had sat earlier. For years, that couch was the site of apologies, arguments, fake reconciliations. Now it was just furniture again. Just a couch. Just mine. I poured myself one last drink, raised the glass toward the empty room, and said softly, to substitutes, the ones who learned they were never temporary. Then I turned off the lights. And this time, the dark didn't feel lonely. It felt earned. If life had a soundtrack, that morning would have opened with something smooth. Maybe Frank Sinatra or a slow-burn jazz number you play while deleting old memories. The kind of music that says, congratulations, you survived the circus. I woke up feeling lighter, like my chest had finally been cleared of unpaid emotional rent. Bianca's confession, her guilt, the look in her eyes when she realized I'd heard everything. Those scenes had replayed in my head all night, but not painfully this time. More like rewatching an old movie you once loved and finally admitting, yeah, the plot was terrible. The house was still. Sunlight spilled through the blinds, cutting clean stripes across the floorboards. I brewed tea instead of coffee, felt more dignified, more divorcee with self-awareness energy. As I waited for the kettle to boil, I caught my reflection in the kitchen window. The guy staring back wasn't the same Marcus from 6 months ago. He looked older, sure, but steadier. His eyes didn't carry that constant question of what did I do wrong. They looked like a man who'd finally stopped auditioning for someone else's approval. Halfway through my first sip, the doorbell rang. I froze. Nobody rings a doorbell before 9 a.m. unless it's a package or a plot twist. I set the mug down, walked over, and opened the door, and there she was again. Bianca. Because apparently closure in my life comes in installments. She stood there holding a small box and that faint, guilty smile people wear when they know they've already overstayed their welcome. Hey, she said softly. I thought I'd drop this off. I leaned on the doorframe. Morning. I was just thinking, you know what this day needs? One more sequel. She exhaled, half laughing. Can I come in? Promise I won't stay long. I hesitated for a beat, then stepped aside. Sure. You've already earned the frequent visitor discount. She walked in, clutching the box like it contained classified material. It's just some of your stuff that ended up in my storage. Books, your watch, that old blue scarf. I nodded. Ah yes, the scarf I wore exactly twice before you said it made me look like a midlife poet. A hint of a smile. It's still soft. Great, I said. I'll add it to my collection of things that aged better than our marriage. That earned a genuine laugh, and for a second the air lightened. But the weight settled back quick, the way it always does when two people stand in the ruins of something that used to be home. She looked around, taking in the changes, the rearranged furniture, the new curtains, the absence of her perfume. It looks different, she said. Yeah, I replied. Turns out peace goes with everything. Her eyes glistened. You really did move on. Bianca, I remodeled emotionally and physically, I said, gesturing toward the living room. If healing had a Home Depot credit card, I maxed it out. She sat on the couch again, her favorite seat once upon a time, and placed the box between us. I didn't come to stir things up. I just wanted to say goodbye properly. I raised an eyebrow. You already said goodbye twice. I'm starting to think this is a subscription. She smiled sadly. You deserve a real one, without all the lies or the noise. The kettle whistled from the kitchen. Tea? I asked. Seems fitting. Sure, she said quietly. While I poured, she walked around the living room like she was cataloging ghosts. I handed her a cup. She wrapped her hands around it like it was the only warm thing she had left. You always made tea like it was a ceremony, she said. Because it was, I replied. Tea's honest. It doesn't pretend to be something else. Coffee wants to be excitement. Tea just wants to exist. She looked at me thoughtfully. You sound happy. Strange, isn't it? Turns out happiness isn't a duet. It's a solo you learn to hum after the noise dies down. She nodded slowly, tears threatening. I really am sorry, Marcus. For everything. For the things I said. For how I made you feel. I sipped my tea and set it down. You know, for the longest time I wanted to hear that. I used to imagine how it'd sound, what I'd say back. Now that you've said it, I realize forgiveness isn't about hearing the right words. It's about finally not needing them. She blinked hard. You already forgave me? Yeah, I said, leaning back. Mostly because carrying hate takes too much upper body strength. That made her laugh through the tears. You really have changed. I had to, I said. Otherwise, I'd still be standing where you left me, wondering if I was enough. She looked down. You were. I just didn't recognize it. Recognition's overrated, I said. Appreciation's where the magic happens. For a long moment, we just sat there. No shouting, no accusations, just two tired people sipping tea and acknowledging the end. Then she said quietly, I thought you'd hate me forever. I smiled. Forever's too long to waste on anyone who used the word substitute. She flinched but nodded. I deserve that. You did. I agreed, then softened. But you also deserve peace. Same as me. She looked up, eyes wide. You really mean that? Yeah, I said. We both burned the bridge. No point standing in the ashes holding torches. Her breath shook out in a half laugh. You're infuriatingly calm. It's the tea, I said. Highly recommend chamomile for post-divorce enlightenment. She set her cup down. Can I ask something personal? Given the precedent, sure. Did you ever love Ruby? That one caught me off guard. I chuckled. Love her? No. Admire her? Absolutely. She reminded me what confidence looks like when it's not fake. Bianca nodded slowly. I was jealous of her. I could see it in your eyes when you talked about her. You looked alive. She was a reminder. I said. Not of what I wanted, but of who I used to be before I forgot myself trying to keep you happy. Her lips quivered. I wish I'd been better to you. I wish you'd been honest with yourself, I replied. Then maybe we both could have been better. She looked at me like she wanted to argue, then just sighed. I don't think I'll ever stop regretting it. Regret's just nostalgia with guilt, I said. You'll live. That broke her composure. Tears slid down her cheeks. I handed her a tissue box. You're still annoyingly kind, she whispered. I'm just house-trained, I said. Years of practice. She laughed, wiping her face. Do you ever think we'll be friends again? I thought about it. Maybe someday. After enough distance. You know, the kind that requires at least one ocean and no Wi-Fi. She smiled weakly. Fair. We finished our tea in silence. There was something oddly peaceful about it, like we were signing an invisible treaty. She glanced around one last time, eyes lingering on the photos on the shelf. None of her were there, of course. Just me, Leo, Ruby, and a few solo shots from hiking trips I took recently. You look genuinely happy in those, she said. I am, I said. Hiking's great. You can't argue with anyone at 4,000 feet. She smiled, then stood up slowly. I should go. Probably for the best, I said. You've met your nostalgia quota for the day. She picked up the box again, but hesitated at the door. Marcus, she said softly, thank you. Not for forgiving me, though that too, but for not turning bitter. You could have destroyed me. You didn't. I shrugged. Destruction's overrated. Silence was louder. She nodded, biting her lip. You'll find someone amazing. I already did, I said, smiling faintly. Me. That stopped her cold. Her eyes shimmered, not from sadness exactly, but recognition. You finally believe that? Yeah, I said. Took a while, but yeah. She smiled through her tears. Goodbye, Marcus. I stepped aside, opened the door, and said quietly, Goodbye, Bianca. She paused, like she wanted to say more, but then she nodded and walked out into the sunlight. I watched her go, not as a man losing something, but as someone watching an old chapter finally close itself. When her car disappeared around the corner, I shut the door gently. No slamming, no dramatic soundtrack, just a soft click that sounded exactly like peace. I went back to the kitchen, poured another cup of tea, and leaned against the counter. The house was quiet again, but this time it didn't echo. It felt like breathing after holding it for too long. The funny thing about endings? They rarely feel cinematic. There's no applause, no grand swell of music, just the stillness of understanding that you survived something that once defined you. I realized that morning that Bianca was never my villain. She was my lesson. And maybe that's the kindest way to remember someone who broke you. By admitting they taught you how not to let it happen again. Later that day, Leo dropped by unannounced, like always. He took one look at me and said, You look like a man who just got promoted to peace of mind. Funny you say that, I replied. My ex just resigned from her position as emotional CEO. He laughed, opening a beer. So that's it. No part 2 revenge? No grand gesture? Nope, I said. Just tea and closure. He raised his bottle. To substitutes who became the main character. I clinked my mug against it. To emotional unemployment. Best job I've ever had. That night, I sat on the balcony, city lights glittering below like tiny possibilities. I scrolled through my phone. Not to stalk, not to reminisce, but to delete. Old messages, photos, voicemails. Every tap felt like trimming dead branches. By the time I was done, the phone felt lighter. So did I? I opened a new note and typed something for myself. Next time someone calls you a substitute, remind them you're the final draft. I smiled, locked the screen, and leaned back. Somewhere down the street, someone was laughing, maybe falling in love, maybe making the same mistakes I once did. That's life. Cyclical, messy, occasionally poetic. But I wasn't afraid of it anymore. Inside, the kettle whistled again, persistent as ever. I walked in, poured another cup, added sugar, and raised it to no one in particular. Here's to new mornings, I said out loud, where the only drama is whether I run out of milk. The steam curled upward, soft and ghost-like, then vanished into the quiet air. For the first time in years, I realized I didn't need a partner, or an apology, or even an ending that made sense. I just needed this, me, my peace, and a damn good cup of tea.